Friends, we've made it. Chord has arrived. I think no one has pulled her. And for those 7 people that did, I want to give you the guide on how to use her, what her powers are, kind of transcribe her kit here for you. And as I get started, a like and a sub would be super helpful. I'm getting so close to 10,000 subs, and I need you to help me get over that hump there. So let's dive right in. Chord herself is a support unit. She's electric in terms of her elements, and she really specializes in upping the damage your team does by enabling more frequent and better highlights. That's basically the root of her kit. So let's dive into her base awareness to start. When using Catchy Hook, which is her skill 3, increase attack by 20%, up to 40% for that battle. Catchy Hook has a cooldown time of 1 turn before it can be used again. Increase the cooldown time each time Catchy Hook is used up to 3 turns. This basically just means that it's going to be lower in cooldown as you start the battle, and then it gets up to kind of a more natural cooldown time. That way you can use it soon, and then it kind of meters off as you go through the fight. All the same, it is an incredibly powerful skill 3. On the talents backing track, when an ally uses a highlight, increase target's attack by 24% for 1 turn. When the target has co-star, which you get from skill 2, increase effect by 1.5 times. So essentially, if you're using the skill 3 on the character, giving them a highlight, or they use a highlight, you're going to be giving them a stronger attack. And if you're doing this on your main DPS, so let's say you have Makoto in the team, they're getting a little bit better of effect because they have this co-star. You're likely putting co-star on that character as well. Chorus effect, after an ally uses a highlight, the ally with the lowest HP recovers HP equal to 15% of her attack plus 1350. This is just a nice little kind of added benefit in my opinion. You're not bringing Closer to be your main sustain. She's not going to replace a Minami or a Morgana or someone with big shields, but it is nice to get a little bit of a heal here and there. And it's one of the reasons you'll see later in the cards that we recommend a heal set in one of the slots. So those are her basic talents. That's her basic awakening. This is the kit you walk in the door with. We'll talk a little bit about the full awarenesses later. And then her skill 1 actually got buffed coming to global compared to other servers in that it gives shock now. So the full effect is an AoE electric skill, deals damage to foes equal to 85.4% of attack, 80% chance to inflict shock on the main target for 2 turns. Shock itself, if you don't know what that is, gives an elemental ailment, which increases the critical rate taken by 10% for 2 turns, so it makes it easier to land your crits. If an ally has co-star, which is usually your main DPS, deal bonus electric damage to the main target equal to 83.3% of that ally's attack. So it's like an additional hit. Let's go ahead and demonstrate this. Let me turn fast mode off. And let's go ahead and use skill 1. So initial hit. And then this one did give the second hit. The reason that is mine is actually A1, my Chord. We'll talk about why that matters later. But if this was turn 1 of a normal battle and you don't have co-star put on somebody, you would not have gotten that extra hit on the first turn. That's a thing for having A1. Let's get back into her. Skill 2, Unison Notes. Grant co-star to 1 ally and increase their attack by 24% of her attack up to 1220 for 3 turns. Only 1 ally can be a co-star at a time. So co-star is not something you can spam on multiple party members. This is going to go to your main DPS. There's really not a reason to give this to like your sustainer or like your main debuffer. And this will obviously increase their attack. We just talked about that. So this is like her main buff that you use just kind of to sustain on your main DPS throughout the battle. So again, we'll show this off here. So Unison Notes, and I'll go ahead and give it to Makoto. Now the crit buff is actually part of her A1, so that's not part of her base kit. We'll cover that in a bit, but let me just show you Makoto here. So now you can see co-star, increase attack by 1188. This all has to do with how much attack you have on the character, so I'm not quite maxing out just yet. And then again, we'll go back, we'll get into her skill 3. Alright, skill 3, this is the Catchy Hook. Immediately activate an ally's highlight and increase its damage by 78.1%. The skill does not affect the target highlight's cooldown time, even if it activates a highlight. So this is, I'm going to say, one of the most powerful skills in the game, honestly. So whenever this is up, you can just launch a highlight on whatever character you want, and it's going to increase that damage, which is just phenomenal. So it's a kind of on command highlight when this is up, and a stronger highlight. So let's go ahead and use this on Makoto. So here we go, we'll pop, oops, I almost popped our highlight. We'll pop Catchy Hook, we'll go over to Makoto. There's this awesome animation, which I unfortunately sped up. And she launches her highlight, and her highlight is stronger. And I'm not buffing my team right now, so her damage is going to look terrible. But it's just amazing to be able to launch a highlight. And then check this out, her highlight's still ready. So I already had my highlight charged. I didn't have to burn it in using that move. And that's what it means by it doesn't, you know, use their highlight up. So I could go right back into a second highlight from Makoto or a highlight from anybody else if I wanted to right here. Matter of fact, that'll bring us right into her highlight. So if I go into skills here, and Thief Tactics, highlight for 4 actions. So actions are not turns. Actions are like actually doing something with a character. Increase party's damage by 45.5%. While active, fill highlight gauge by 10% after each ally action up to 40%. So you're charging highlights faster and the party is going to do more damage. So if you have that going and then you launch highlights and then you're buffing your highlights, like the highlights just go crazy from using her. So let's undo my fast forward and let's go ahead and show that off. I love her animations, by the way. And there you go. So you saw the damage up flash in there, and now she's got her highlight effect running. So let's back out. I'm going to show you next her awarenesses. So the full, 1 through 6, and we'll talk a bit about which ones are good, which ones might be bad. So that way you understand how to kind of gauge your pulls. All right, here we are. We've already talked about opening X, so let's go ahead and get right into awareness 1. This is what you saw in my character and why I triggered a couple of effects. At the start of battle, grant co-star to the ally with the highest attack for 3 turns, prioritizing assassins and sweepers, these are your DPS dealers. Increase that ally's critical rate by 15%. This is very strong. There's not a lot of characters that I really sit back and say, go grab their A1 if you have the resources, of course, but she is on that list, her and like Futaba, for example. And so if you find yourself somehow in a surplus of materials, it's not a terrible A1 to get. I like it, I chased it, obviously because I have it, but getting this crit rate and having the battle start with co-star, it allows you to go right into using skill 1 as opposed to setting up co-star and then going into your attacks. So you're doing more damage, your ally's doing more damage. It's all around a great awakening, and it's an early one, it's A1. A2, when using Catchy Hook, increase target allies damage by 30% for 1 turn. This just means that they're going to get that better highlight damage. This is okay, it's decent, it's a good damage boost, but it's not anywhere near as impactful as the A1. And I would say that if you were not going to go kind of full throttle into A6, I would stop at A1. I would not go into A2 for this 30%. I think you just go get yourself another character or a weapon or something else. I would not push this to A2. A3, this is more skill levels. A4, highlight enhanced, increase effect duration to 6 ally actions. Remember, it was 4 actions at its non-awakened level. Fill highlight gauge up to 60% and decrease highlight activation cooldown for all other allies by 1 turn. So this whole thing is basically just boosting how much faster you get into highlights because you're getting up to 60% reduction or fill on highlight gauge instead of 40 from only having 4 ally actions. And it's, decreasing highlight activation cooldown for other allies by turn. More highlights, better highlights, you're not going wrong there. This is more skills. In awareness 6, this is, I don't want to say it's broken, but it's really, really good. At the start of battle, Catchy Hook can be used immediately. Okay, so you launch right into a highlight. Cooldown time is permanently decreased to 1 turn and won't increase. So now you're launching this all the time. Every time Catchy Hook is used, increase the party's damage by 20% up to 2 stacks, so 40% basically. You're just starting with highlights, extra highlights. You're doing better highlights because of all the awareness is on the way. You're increasing party damage, and they're coming up faster. Like what could be bad about this entire skill? So there are going to be people that look at Chord and wail out to awareness 6. I will say if you're investing that far and you have that kind of, pull economy to do so, then you're getting a good return for doing so. However, she's fine at A0. And I know a lot of people are freaking out right now saying, oh, but the A1 is really good. It is. It's absolutely really good. I don't think it's better than a whole other character. I think that if you have enough extra or you're a bit of a spender, it's fine to go for A1, hence why I have it. But I don't think it's necessary. My other account does not have an A1 and is perfectly fine. And I honestly still don't think you should chase to an A6 unless, again, if it's a favorite character and you want to go for it, have your fun with it. I don't care. Or if you're a whale, then you're probably going to do it because it's the only way you're going to be competitive, completely competitive in like your guild trials and stuff after all the whales get their A6s. So I think those are reasons to go for it. I don't think the average player or a free-to-play player has any reason to go to A6. Most likely doesn't need to go to A1, but I think some people are going to do it because they see this 15% crit rate. Yeah, it's good, but you can also get crit rate on your cards, things of that nature. So don't feel pressured to chase A1 and certainly don't feel pressured to A6. There's nothing in this game that wants an A6 chord except for top guilds competing with one another for scores. Literally, that's the only thing that is good for. So be careful. Don't let the FOMO trick you into it. That's her awarenesses. They are very good. As far as skill priority, you're really looking at these three. So skill 2, skill 3, and the final skill, the highlight. I did bump my distortion all the way up. This is a character that's on so many teams that I don't feel like it's a wasted investment. But you could also stop distortion earlier. Really what you're using this for is for the shock. She's not going to come in and deal massive amounts of damage, so don't feel the need to get to level 10 like I did. I always knew that I was going to fully max out Chord. That's a personal choice. But as far as what has priority, it's going to be your catchy hook, your unison notes, and then our highlight. That's where you want to invest your limited resources. And then if you want to, distortion, otherwise maybe gets like rank 6 or so. And just know that you're really using it for the shock more than anything else. Weapons. Do you need her weapon? Let's go over it first. So I don't even know. Yeah, I don't have her 4-star. Let me go check it out really quickly. All right, so 4-star weapon. Pretty basic. Increase her attack, which is good for the way that her powers scale. After using Catchy Hook, increase attack by 28% for 2 turns. These values will go up if you choose to spend coins or use resources to max this out. It's okay. It's okay. It's giving her attack, which helps her buffs, but it's nothing remarkable. And as far as 4-star weapons go, it's incredibly basic. So it's not one I put a lot of thought into. That said, her 5-star is pretty incredible. Increase attack by 30%. At the start of battle, fill highlight gauge by 40%, increase Chord's attack by 15%. Each time an ally uses a highlight, increase co-star's attack by 5%, stacks up to 3 times. So again, the co-star is going to be your damage dealer. So whenever you're using highlights, which is more frequently because of, her kit that we've been talking about, they're getting a boost. The co-star is also getting a boost up here. And the big one, honestly, is this fill highlight gauge. I want to talk about duplicates here, because a lot of people are deciding if they want to chase duplicates on her or her weapon. And the thing to think about, it's less about these extra benefits and it's more about the highlight gauge. When you get to Forge level 5, not even 6, okay? When you get up to Forge level 5, you get a 76% highlight gauge fill just for walking into the battle. With the card set I'm going to show you, that means your highlight will be charged to 100% when you come in the door. Plus, you're getting all the other benefits of extra percentages or whatever. And so if you're going to chase dupes for the sake of this kind of insta-charge highlight effect, you don't have to go to 6. You only have to go to 5. That said, kind of like the character themselves, don't get caught up into somebody else has this and so you feel like you need it. This is a lot of commitment to go all the way to Forge 5. I get that weapons are cheaper than characters in terms of how many gems it takes to pull them, but you're still going pretty hardcore into a weapon for the sake of getting a highlight to start at the start of battle. If obviously you're a whale and you're chasing like the top scores for a guild boss, fine, go for it. But I've never had more than a regular default weapon for her and I've never cared. Like, it's been absolutely fine. So it is an incredible weapon, very, very strong. I'm going to say you should probably pull it. Honestly, if you really want to get a great chord going, you don't have to dupe it out, but you do want to pull this weapon. It's incredible. So our weapon is there. Let's talk about revelations. Revelations or card sets. What you see on my screen here is exactly what I think you should be running for her. Now, there will be some other sets I can tell you about, but you're looking at the Trust and Prosperity set. The reason I like this set is up here, and this is what I was just talking about with the weapon, is on the 4-piece, at the start of battle, fill the highlight gauge by 25%, won't activate if stacked. So basically you can't have like 4 characters running this and then you get 100% from that. But if you did have her weapon, at R5, that plus this gives you your 100%. So it's good from that perspective. But again, even without that, the default 40%, you're getting a 65% highlight charge walking in the door. And so when you're coming into turn 2, you're going to have a full highlight. And then for the complete set with Trust, after using a skill on an ally, increase party's damage by 8% for 2 turns. Well, you're going to be using co-star. So this is going to be going off every couple of turns. So you're going to have this nice little damage boost. As far as the cards and their main stats / substats, so for Sun, of course, HP is the only option you have. On Moon, I would recommend HP Recovery. Reason being is that extra little talent where you can do a little bit of healing. You should, once you get enough cards refined, be able to get into the max attack multiplier to give her total buff that she can do, at which point you're going to want other kinds of stats anyways. And so HP Recovery works well here to give her that little bit of extra sustain from her talent. On Star, I'm going with attack percent. This is part of how I get that attack so high. Same thing with Sky. These are kind of your typical main stats. Now, depending on how well you've got her attack built to whether or not she's maxing out her buffs, you can start subbing things out for other things. Like if you didn't need an extra, attack or something like that, maybe you could go with a crit rate and give her a little bit more damage juice. But at least with the cards that I have right now, I need that extra attack, and I think a lot of people will. And so having your HP recovery, and your 2 attacks is going to go a long ways to getting her attack built to where you want it. Substat wise, a couple ways to build her. So now that she has shock on her skill 1, we can start looking at doing ailment accuracy to help that land. That didn't used to be something to think about, which is why maybe some older guides may not show that. But I would consider a little bit of ailment accuracy on her substats. Otherwise, you're going to want to look for your attack stats up until the point that you've maxed her buff. And otherwise, I think you look at things for survivability. Get a little bit of HP on there is not a bad idea. Maybe a little bit of defense if it rolls in there. This card has SP Recovery. I don't think that's really that necessary. It just happened to have rolled there. I don't think I've ever really had SP management issues on her. You can also build a little bit of offense into her, especially if you're an A1. It means that you're starting the battle off with a couple of turns of her skill 1. So getting a little bit more juice out of that's not terrible. But your first thing is really get your attack to the point that you've maxed out your buffs. Then you want to get a little bit of ailment accuracy to make sure that your shock is landing. Then put a little bit of survivability into her, get her some HP, HP percent in particular. And if you have a little bit of room to squeeze some crit rate, crit multiplier in there, it's not going to be terrible for her, but she is not your primary damage dealer. The way I'm building mine is going to be more towards the ailment accuracy to drive that shock into the opponent. I'm going to really take advantage of that. And then I'll probably go more towards the defense. I want her to live, HP, and things like that. So that's how I'm building mine. But yeah, I think from a priority standpoint, attack is your top pick. You got to max out those buffs. I would put in a little bit of the ailment accuracy, and then I would go into probably more towards your survivability. That's how I'm going to build mine, at least. And then we have our new friend, and I can finally show this. Is the first time I can show this on global, is Mindscape. So, of course, the top track is your little star things, whatever they're called. These. So these stat bonuses aren't incredible. Like, don't lose sleep over these. You're using this to unlock the bottom path. And then for the bottom path, unfortunately, I can't click on it and show you, but you'd be going for the skill over here first. This is going to boost up your skill 2 and 3. This one is second. This is going to give you your skill 1 and your highlight. Then you've got an attack bonus and you've got a damage reduction. I don't know. If you're doing enough in your card, you probably don't even need too much over here for giving you the percentages. And then damage reduction bonus, that's just going to be something to help you out to, survive a little bit. So if you're going to spend your limited resources on her, I would focus on the skills first and then move into your stats. But I still think with how limited these resources are, most of the time, I'm going to be putting my limited resources into my main DPS. But hey, if she's your favorite, or if you've got enough and you want to, I would go 1, 2, probably damage reduction, and then attack unless you need more attack. And that's how I'd build her. Bell's a bit more frequent, and these are going to give things like life. So these aren't like super critical. They're not as rare as these other two. But that's the first time I can show Mindscape in the actual GUI. So that's her whole kit. Let me go load up a fight. Okay, so for this fight, I want to note something right off the bat, that this is one of the guild bosses. This is not a demonstration of how to do the guild boss. The way you set up buffs and debuffs on the guild bosses into their weakened state is a completely different topic. It needs its own kind of videos, and honestly, Earphone is the king of the rotations for that. And what I would do in a guild boss truly to get a high score is different than what I'm going to show you today. What I'm going to show you is your typical Chord setup for most fights that you're going to go through in the game. This could be like your hard damage fights for like bosses at a palace, or like really hard memento fights, and occasional modes that don't need like good score, but you still want to do really good damage on a window. So with that, that's how I'm going to approach this fight. Don't follow this for the guild boss. Go follow Earphone for the guild boss. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by, using my other characters pretty close to how I would typically use them. So I'm going to throw some buffs, I'm going to throw some debuffs, because a lot of how you use Chord has to do with how you're timing your buff window and when you want to launch your biggest damage. So right here, I'm on her first turn. I'm going to pretend she's A0. I'm going to show you A0, and then I'm going to tell you what's different about A1. So A0, I wouldn't have had this launched at the start of the battle, and so I'd want to put this onto Makoto right away, or whoever your main damage dealer is in that particular fight. So there we go, I've got that up. Makoto in this situation, I would probably actually do this in this scenario. So I've got some buffs starting up, I've got some debuffs starting up. This was a terrible fight to demonstrate because I actually would have wanted to block that first round. I may have to do some resets here. And so, now I'm going to line up some other damage. And now it's going to come to where I get back to Chord, and she's going to have her skill 3 ready. And I think the kind of default that a lot of people are going to do is they're going to want to go right into it. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually pop her highlight and get the highlight charge going and get ready to buff this up. And then, Vino here can do skill 3, whatever. Let me get it back into Chord. But as an A0, or even honestly as an A1, which I have, this is a spot where, actually I need to not die. This is a spot where I'm actually going to use her damage. I'm not going to go right into skill 3 even though it's ready, because it's typically your turn 3 where your buffs and debuffs are better lined up. So here I'm going to use actually skill 1, and you can see I got the shotgun there, which is very nice. I also got the extra hit because of her because of the co-star being a Makoto. So now I'm starting to get into the place where I'm actually aligning my buffs and debuffs. I'm going to switch this over for her because I want her in her mode. And actually, just so I can survive, I'm just going to kill everything. I need to not die in this round so we can kill the side ads. Okay, so now you're going to see my highlights already recharged. So even though I just used her highlight, I'm back to a highlight already. I can now make sure some debuffs are lined up. And now I can jump into a Verkunda. Actually, I kind of want to do this power right now. And so what have I done by delaying that highlight? Now I get to use back-to-back highlights. I've got more debuffs on the enemy. I've got more buffs on my party. So even though it was ready in turn 2, I'm delaying it to turn 3 because I've just got a better buff and debuff window. And the reason the buff and debuff window is oftentimes done on turn 3 is because things like Rebellion are 3 turns. So by the time I get to my next turn, I have to start reapplying buffs. So it's not always the case. It's not like every single battle works this way, but in many battles, you're working on this kind of 3 turn cycle rotation. So now what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to pop her skill 3. I'm going to go into that extra highlight, if you want to call it that. Boom, I'm going to pop this off. And I just did a bunch of damage. Knocked him right into his weak phase. And now I'm back on Makoto, and I can go right back into our highlight. So I'm doing back-to-back highlights that are amped up. And then, of course, I'm still buffed, and so then I can go into some more damage. So again, from a guild boss fight, that is not good damage. That's actually really terrible damage. I should be hitting about 500,000 right there if I did this fight properly. But that is more of how you would set up a Chord in a typical battle. If you have A1, the only difference is you don't have to use skill 2. So if I go back to, her part of the turn here, when you started with an A0, you had to start by giving the skill 2 to somebody to make them your co-star. So you had to get that buff rolling. For a typical A1, or For an A1, your Chord has already done that. When you walk in the battle, this has already been cast on whoever's got the most attack, which is going to be your damage dealer. And so the only thing that's different is instead of leading with this skill, you do skill 1. So you'd go skill 1, skill 1, skill 3. Instead of skill 2, skill 1, skill 3. So you get one extra like little damage round if you want to call it that. And again, that's with the consideration that you're trying to set up for a turn 3 big DPS spike, which is very, very much often what you're going to do. Hopefully that made sense. If I oversimplify it, your A0 is skill 2, skill 1, skill 3. Your A1 is skill 1, skill 1, skill 3. And then you have to start doing skill 2 after that. That's about it. But that's how I would line her up into a damage window. Don't get over trigger happy on using skill 3 the second it opens up necessarily. Now, if you're A6, different story, you can just leave with skill 3. But yeah, so that's how I would use her. And that brings us to the last two kind of key topics that we always talk about here. And that's going to be what team you should build around her. And it's going to be should you pull. So let me back out and get out of everything here. So let's make a team for our good friend Chord. Let me do it here in the actual right window. So what teams work with Chord? Wait until you see this very small list. Let's put Chord in the lead spot. Who works with Chord? That. Did you see it? That. Your whole roster works with Chord, with the exception of Fox. Fox doesn't scale based on attack. His highlight is decent, but it's not, you know, like a crazy damage one. And so he is the only one that I don't really think about putting a Chord into. And then later on down the road, you're going to get characters from P3 that have theurgies, and she doesn't re-trigger the theurgies. And so she's not as strong. The P3 parties tend to be more centered around themselves or other buffers and debuffers. So she doesn't necessarily need to go in there. She's also strongest on teams that want 1 DPS. If you're running a DPS, sub-DPS team, so maybe you're doing, I don't know why you would do this, but maybe you're running like a Joker and a Yui. I don't know why I would use this particular team, but in a situation like this, she can only have 1 co-star, so you can only buff 1 main DPS. So she wouldn't be there for like if you're trying to run 2 DPSs, but again, I don't think you're typically going to use 2 DPSs. So with the exception of Fox in that situation, and of course Theurgy's well down the line, this is after first anniversary, she's good with every DPS. There isn't anyone else who doesn't want to be buffed. So now you're sitting back with a Chord on most of your teams, a main damage dealer, and so it's really all about your third slot and what are you going to put in there. And so like if we look at some common teams that people will have, if I had Makoto, now the question is, what about Vino? Well, so first of all, on a Makoto team, I'm always going to have Vino. Let me actually put her in this slot. And so the question is, can I do more damage or do I need sustain? If I don't need sustain, if I don't need a healer for a fight, that's where Chord comes in. If I need a healer for a fight, then that's actually a place where I take Chord out. Because in this situation, Makoto really thrives off of Vino, and I would want Vino in that party. If I'm running, say, an on team, then in this situation, sorry, now my teams are all messed up. In this situation, I would have Chord, and then I could have somebody like a Key. And again, oh my God, I don't know how to click on people. And so something like this could be a lot of damage. This could be a lot of fun to run. And the big thing, again, you see here is I'm not running a sustain. So you're always going to be putting yourself in a situation to ask yourself, do I need sustain or not? Because if I don't need sustain, I need, or not need, but I want another damage dealer. And then maybe I want like a debuffer. Like something like this, I could actually throw a Vino into a team like this. You know, so I kind of prioritize my fights around if I need a healer or not. If I don't need a healer, then it's Chord and probably a debuffer. You can also go double buffing, just depending on your teams. Like you could put a Leo in this slot if you wanted to. Or if this was Joker, like you could have a Joker, you could have a Rin, and you could have a Chord. That'd be a fun team. And then pick the Navigator that makes the most sense for you. And so she is just an instant slot in to any DPS team other than probably Fox at this point in the game, at least. So, you know, try her, throw her in your teams, consider her your best support. She's going to do the amazing things for you. And then really just figure out your third slot. Figure out if you need sustain or not. Again, with maybe the exception of the Makoto team, I kind of want a Vino on my Makoto team at all times. That's where I might change my tune and pull Chord out for a sustainer if I had to. But there's a lot of content that just doesn't need a healer. It's just the truth. Like even the guild bosses, you try to force without a healer most of the time. But that's the teams. As far as should you pull, yes, absolutely yes. You know, I'm still going to sit back and say play the game your way. I don't necessarily think I would even call her a meta chase. I know she is like the meta of metas. She just makes the game more fun. What she enables on your teams, in my opinion, it's just delightful. I like using her. I like timing these damage windows with double, you know, back-to-back highlights. I like the buffs that she provides. I like the kit of her and everything else. But whether you're meta or you just want your game to feel more comfortable, I think she is a really, really top tier pick. I think she is honestly deserving of all the praise that she gets. And there's other characters where I think that they might get overhyped. They're good, but they're like, okay, if you didn't get them, like whatever. But Chord is one of those characters I think a lot of people are going to regret if they don't get her. They're going to start really understanding what she can do, and they're going to want to have her. Now, as far as awarenesses go, I don't think you need awarenesses. I think that is where a lot of people will make the mistake. Oh, do you guys notice EY just like went on vacation? Like he got tired of me standing there looking at him apparently. But for the awarenesses, I think you're fine A0 with just the base weapon. I don't think you need any duplicates at all. If you really want to, I would go to an A1 and I would stop. I would not go any higher on Awakenings unless you plan on going to A6. You're just not getting enough on those in-betweens to justify how many characters you can pull. And if you want to go from a priority order of, you know, should you push weapons first or character, I think the right order is get your character, obviously, then get the weapon, because it does juice her up quite well, then go back for your A1. Then I think it depends on your wallet. I could see an argument of going to an R5, so, you know, all but one awakening to get your insta-charge highlight at the start of the battle. But if I had to pick an R5 over an A6, I'd rather have an A6, personally. I know some people would debate that and say they'd rather have the R5 for the instant highlight charge, but waiting a turn or two to get the highlight's not huge. But also, I don't think you need to change the 6 anyways. So I say go character, weapon, A1. And after that, if you want to spend money, have free. Have fun. Not have free. Have fun. That needs to be your pick, not mine. So that's it. That's what I think about her. I think you should pull her. There's very, very few characters I'm going to tell you that too. She is one of them. Another one will be Futaba. Another one will be Anj. And so she is one of my highest recommendations. I think she does a lot for accounts. With that, my friends, drop questions if you have them in the chat. And again, on your way out, a like and a sub would be tremendous. And until our next video or live stream, please take care of yourselves.